In Washington, political ambushes are routine. A carefully timed question. A loaded quote. A plan designed to humiliate the opponent on live TV. But every once in a while, the trap backfires. That's exactly what happened the day Republicans tried to weaponize Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legacy against a rising Democrat named Jasmine Crockett. What was supposed to be a knockout punch turned into one of the most viral political takedowns in recent memory, a moment that didn't just offend her, but redefined the entire debate over America's courts. This is the story of how a single hearing, a single exchange, and a single clip changed everything. For decades, the United States Supreme Court carried a reputation of being above raw politics, seen as the guardian of law, fairness, and constitutional balance even when justices were appointed by presidents of opposing ideologies, but that image has crumbled. By the time Representative Jasmine Crockett sat down in that hearing room, America had already watched the court transform from an institution of restraint into a battlefield of partisan warfare, where integrity, neutrality, and judicial independence, values Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg had sworn to uphold, were stripped away piece by piece through strategic retirements, weaponized filibusters, and confirmation hearings designed more for political theater than for evaluating qualifications. The refusal to consider President Obama's nominee Merrick Garland in 2016, the lightning-fast confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett just days before the 2020 election, and the use of judicial philosophies like originalism and textualism as ideological shields all pushed trust in the court to historic lows, with many Americans seeing justices as political actors in robes. For Crockett, a civil rights lawyer who had witnessed the court's decisions shape lives on issues like voting rights and reproductive freedoms, the decline wasn't just legal, it was a democracy issue. And for her, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was never just a name in a textbook but a blueprint. The jurist who dismantled gender barriers in United States v. Virginia who dissented against pay discrimination in Ledbetter v. Goodyear and whose words in my own words and framed quotes in Crockett's office served as a North Star throughout her career. So when Chairwoman Williams tried to weaponize Ginsburg's testimony about judicial restraint to suggest the court's integrity remained intact, Crockett felt more than a political attack. She felt betrayal, as if her mentor's legacy was being twisted into a tool against the very people carrying her unfinished fight. In that hearing room, Crockett wasn't just defending her credibility or her policies, she was defending the memory of a woman whose shoulders she stood upon, exposing the truth millions already felt, that the collapse of judicial norms had left America vulnerable, and no amount of political gaslighting could weaponize Ruth Bader Ginsburg against the next generation of women fighters. The plan had been months in the making. Republicans believed Jasmine Crockett, though sharp and passionate, was too inexperienced to withstand a carefully orchestrated ambush, so they chose Chairwoman Margaret Williams, polished and confident, as the face of the attack, arming her with selective quotes from Ruth Bader Ginsburg to paint Crockett as reckless, radical, and out of step with her own heroes. The strategy was simple: cast her as disrespectful of tradition, force her into a corner, and generate headlines like "Young Progressive Defies Ginsburg's Own Words." But what they hadn't anticipated was that Crockett knew this playbook better than they did. While Williams practiced soundbites, Crockett studied the full arc of Ginsburg's philosophy, armed with highlighted citations tucked neatly into her folder. So when Williams leaned back, smirked, and delivered the scripted ambush, even Justice Ginsburg warned against radical changes. Crockett let the silence hang, then calmly struck back, "I noticed you stopped the video right before she explained what judicial restraint actually means in practice." From there, she dismantled the attack point by point, walking the committee through the stolen Garland seat, partisan blockades, and ideological court packing, asking with each devastating example, "Where was your concern for judicial restraint then?" Her words came faster, sharper, on voting rights gutted, women's freedoms stripped, corporations shielded, hammering Williams like a prosecutor with a hostile witness. Finally, folder in hand like an indictment, she delivered the kill shot. "The truth is, Chairwoman Williams, you don't care about Justice Ginsburg's philosophy. You care about using her name to protect a system that benefits you and your donors." Justice Ginsburg understood that real respect for the Constitution sometimes means changing the systems that have been broken. The room froze, cameras zoomed in on Williams' red and shaken face, and what had been designed as Crockett's public humiliation had transformed into her coronation. By the time she returned to her seat, everyone knew Jasmine Crockett had just won. It started with a single clip, 30 seconds of Jasmine Crockett standing tall, folder in hand, asking the question that ricocheted across the internet. When your judges rewrote campaign finance law to let billionaires buy elections, where were your passionate defenses of judicial modesty? Within minutes, it was everywhere. shared by activists, retweeted by celebrities, stitched into TikToks by students who had never before watched a congressional hearing. By nightfall, #Crockett destroys Williams drowned out the GOP's carefully planned #Ginsburg vs. Crockett. Meme culture took over. One viral post showed Williams' confident smile at the start of the hearing beside her stunned expression during Crockett's response, captioned, "when you try to ambush someone who actually did their homework." Another showed Crockett raising her folder, receipts brought. Influencers with millions of followers amplified it. TikTok edits paired her takedown with triumphant music, and news outlets scrambled to keep pace. Within days, polls showed rising support for judicial reforms, donations to progressive groups surged, and students plastered Crockett's quotes on posters. What was meant to end her career had instead launched her into national stardom, because in the modern political era, power doesn't belong to the committee gavel, it belongs to the clip that goes viral, and Crockett had delivered the clip of the year. For Margaret Williams, the aftermath was brutal. What was supposed to be her shining moment, a coronation as the GOP's rising star, turned her into a punchline. Donors who had invested millions in branding her as the Republican answer to AOC were livid, venting to the press that she couldn't even handle basic research. Her Iowa approval ratings cratered from 54% to 38% in a week, with voters citing her as unprepared, outmatched, embarrassed. Rivals inside her own party weaponized the memes, fundraising off her humiliation. Scrambling to recover, Williams went on a friendly conservative interview and dismissed Crockett as a good speechmaker, but when pressed on Ginsburg's quotes, she admitted on camera, "I wasn't familiar with those particular statements." That single line spread almost as fast as the original clip, confirming the obvious, she hadn't done her homework. By week's end, GOP strategists conceded the ambush had backfired spectacularly, elevating Crockett while shattering Williams' aura of competence. And in politics, once that illusion breaks, it rarely returns. Here's your two parts merged into a single, seamless narrative. While Margaret Williams scrambled to contain the wreckage, Jasmine Crockett's star was exploding. Overnight, her social media following doubled. Within a week, she had gained more than 3 million new followers across platforms. Every clip of her confrontation racked up hundreds of thousands of views, students stitched her quotes into motivational TikToks, and activists turned her lines into rallying chants. Her inbox overflowed with speaking requests from law schools, civil rights groups, and major Democratic fundraisers, while small dollar donations poured in from across the country, more than $8 million in just 1 month, most from first-time donors who left notes like, "I saw what you did to that Republican woman, keep fighting." Party leaders who once worried she was too fiery for the national stage quickly reversed course. House Minority Leader Sarah Davis tweeted, Jasmine Crockett showed America what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Brilliant. Inspiring. Unstoppable. Behind closed doors, strategists floated her name for higher office, maybe even the presidency, as young women, especially women of color, embraced her as a symbol of possibility, proof that a new generation could not only enter the halls of power but take command of them. And Crockett's impact went beyond politics, she shifted the national debate itself. Before that hearing, judicial reform was a fringe idea, whispered in progressive circles and mocked as radical by conservatives. But Crockett, grounding her arguments in the evolution of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's own words, reframed reform as reasonable, urgent, even patriotic. Clips of her dismantling Williams became teaching tools. Her line "true respect for the Constitution sometimes requires changing the systems that have been broken" plastered on protest signs, op-eds, and advocacy ads. The shift was measurable. Support for expanding the Supreme Court rose from 42% to 48% in just weeks. Among college-educated women, it jumped nearly 10 points. Law professors praised her framing as historically accurate, and even some conservative scholars begrudgingly conceded her citations of Ginsburg were airtight. Suddenly, judicial reform was no longer a squad talking point, it was a mainstream Democratic position. Donations to reform groups surged, bills gained co-sponsors, and cable news filled with panels debating ideas once untouchable. In a fiery interview, Crockett captured the moment. For too long, people said these ideas were unrealistic. But what's unrealistic is letting a broken system strip away rights while we do nothing. Justice Ginsburg saw that. I see it too. And now, millions of Americans see it. She hadn't just won an argument, she had reframed the national conversation. Do you want me to condense this into a polished magazine feature, like a New Yorker or Atlantic profile, or keep it epic and cinematic, like a chapter from a political thriller ***? For decades, Washington had run on the assumption that seniority equals strength, that experience equals authority, that the older, more seasoned politician would always dominate the young newcomer. But in that hearing room, Jasmine Crockett shattered that illusion. Margaret Williams came armed with institutional weight, the gavel, the chairmanship, the blessing of her party elders. Crockett came armed with preparation, authenticity, and facts. And in the end, it wasn't even close. Analysts called it a role reversal. The older Republican looked flustered and unprepared, while the younger Democrat appeared seasoned, precise, and unshakable. The symbolism was impossible to miss. A 33-year-old black congresswoman from Texas standing toe-to-toe with the establishment, not just surviving, but winning. It was more than a political clash, it was a generational transfer of power, broadcast live and clipped into millions of feeds. Young people saw themselves in Crockett, not just her identity, but her method. She didn't rely on bluster or theatrics. She relied on discipline, evidence, and moral clarity. Law students, especially women of color, filled social media with posts saying, "this is why I'm applying to law school." Activists pointed to her as proof that preparation could topple entrenched power. Meanwhile, Republican strategists admitted privately what they would not say aloud: seniority and tradition could no longer intimidate younger progressives. The new generation wasn't just louder. It was sharper, hungrier, better prepared. As one analyst put it, this wasn't just Crockett versus Williams. It was the old guard versus the new. And the old guard lost. Years from now, historians may look back on that hearing not for the legislation debated but for the shift it symbolized. Crockett's clash with Williams proved that the old rules of power were being rewritten. A single, prepared voice could outweigh party machinery and donor money if it resonated with truth. The moment lives on not only in viral clips and memes but in the movement it sparked. Judicial reform leaping from margins to mainstream, young leaders refusing to wait their turn, millions realizing how one person armed with facts could reshape the narrative of an entire party. For Williams, it was a cautionary tale, proof that ambition without preparation can collapse in an instant. For Crockett, it became the foundation of a career destined to rise higher. But the legacy stretched far beyond two politicians. The hearing redefined what political power looks like in the digital age, no longer confined to gavels or committee rooms but carried through viral clips, shared stories, and collective memory. Crockett understood that language better than anyone else. As one commentator later wrote, what Margaret Williams tried to make into a trap became Jasmine Crockett's launchpad. The question isn't whether this moment made her a star. The question is how far that star will rise, and how many others will follow in her path. That's why the story still resonates, not because it was a perfect speech or flawless debate, but because it captured the rare instant when a leader steps out of obscurity, seizes the national stage, and never lets it go. That was Jasmine Crockett's legacy from the hearing, not just a viral moment, but a turning point.